Jaron Boots Ennis, the new IBF champion, could fight Mario Barrios possibly for another belt if Terence Crawford vacates, that is. In a brand new interview with YSM Sports Media, Bozy Ennis, the father and trainer of Jaron Ennis, said regarding a Mario Barrios fight, quote, "That's going to happen. I'm sure about that. That fight does make sense. We could put those titles up. We can do that. Mario Barrios, he's next in line. Then we're going to take it." I didn't know it was going to happen like that. And that was when he was asked about the Barrios victory over Yordenis Ugas. He's being frank and he's being upfront saying, you know, I didn't know Barrios was going to handle Ugas like that. He says the truth. I thought Ugas was going to take it, but I don't know what kind of effect he had when he fought Errol Spence in 2022 because he was beat up kind of bad. And Mario Barrios didn't make it no better because he did the same thing to him. So I think that's a problem for that side of his face. Mario Barrios looked good. He boxed and moved. He didn't just stay there. He didn't bang with them only when he had him where he was supposed to have him at. I mean, once he started blinding Ugas with his eyes, swelling them, then he started digging down. He looked good. Bozy Ennis continued to talk about titles and his son's eventual path. He says all the ones in the top 5, all the ones that have a title, because they're going to be splitting the titles up, meaning if Bud and Errol Spence move up. So whoever gets the titles, that's who we're going after. And once we do that, we're going to move on, said Bozy Ennis. So the question was posed to him, if Terence Crawford vacates the WBC belt for any reason, would you fight Mario Barrios? And he was explaining that Barrios has the WBC Interim belt, so he would definitely be in play for that opportunity, and it would be a unification since the IBF already stripped Jaron Ennis. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video. I will give you my complete thoughts on Jaron Ennis versus Mario Barrios. Happy New Year. It's a brand new year, 2024. This looks like a likely fight that we could get. But now a word from the channel's sponsor. Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster. We working. 2024 is a brand new year. I can't wait to get this year cracking. We got some new fights. Definitely a fan of Jaron Boots Ennis. I like the way he's moving. He's calling out everybody. Called out Errol Spence Jr. Hey, man, damn, stop that kid. Couldn't get that fight. Clearly, Spence went on to fight Crawford. Called out Crawford. Couldn't get that fight. They stripped Crawford. You know, Jaron Ennis is doing his thing. Listen, on my channel, I'm always fair. I'm firm. I'm not gonna, some people hate like, oh, who's Jaron fought and all that type of stuff. But here's the thing. Who wants to fight Jaron? That's the real question. Because it takes two to tango. And if the top dogs that he was calling out, they all seem to go in a different direction. That's not his fault. And I don't blame Errol Spence or Terence Crawford for going in a different direction, because that's the fight that the world of boxing needed to see. So Jaron had to kind of take a back seat in that equation. That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. If the world wants to see Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, yeah, there's other good fights for Manny Pacquiao. Like, let's say Danny Garcia at the time wanted to fight Manny Pacquiao. Well, Danny got to take a back seat because Pacquiao's not going to detour to fight Danny Garcia, you know, or Terence Crawford even back then when the world wants to see him fight Floyd Mayweather. So Jaron Ennis and team, they've been very patient. They've been, you know, just playing the game how you're supposed to be playing it. Fight who you can fight, put up impressive performances. Because, like, here's another good fight. I think Rashidi Ellis was put on the card with Jaron Ennis to build up a Jaron Ennis and Rashidi Ellis fight, but Ellis ended up doing very good, but losing to Villa, and then that's who Jaron Ennis fought. But if Rashidi Ellis would have won, I think they truly were going to try to make that fight, which would have been a great fight with two undefeated fighters, and it ended up being Jaron Boots stopping Villa, which was also a very good fight, and Villa won versus Ellis. The other thing you have to consider is some people who said that they wanted to fight him, you didn't really see no follow-up. Like, let's say Virgil Ortiz. Virgil Ortiz, his name was synonymous with Jaron Ennis, but then at the end of the day, he couldn't make it to any of his fights. Like, there was 2 to 3, 4 pullouts because he kept getting sick and struggling to make weight. Now he's in the new weight class and he's fighting in January. So all of which Jaron Ennis is not responsible for it. How is it his fault that Virgil Ortiz can't make weight? Another person that comes to mind for me is Conor Benn. You have Conor Benn, and Conor Benn called out Jaron Ennis and said he would fight Jaron Ennis. Then literally maybe a week later, they were talking about Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. And then they said the Chris Eubank fight fell apart, or Chris Eubank wanted too much money, or whatever the situation was. And next thing you know, when Conor Benn and Chris Eubank fell apart and fizzled out, they already had a February opponent for Conor Benn. So I was looking at it, I'm like, how is he going to call out Jaron Ennis and say he wants to scrap for real? But you were really doing business trying to make the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, which fell apart only because Ben failed for banned substances, failed a PED test. And then you already have this Dobson fight lined up. So that's not, like, you're not really serious if the call out is conveniently done and then miraculously you have another fight lined up immediately after. That left no time to negotiate. So I'm not going to blame Jaron Ennis for all these things. As far as the Barrios fight, love it. If that's what they can make, love it. Barrios, he held his own versus Keith Thurman. That was a good fight. He even hurt Keith Thurman, and it looked like he was about to stop him. You had the referee, Steve Willis, the one with his eyes be all bugged out, and he was making all these eye looks and popping his eyes out because Barrios was about to sleep Keith Thurman. That's what it was looking like. Then he takes some time off and comes back, fights your Dennis Ugas, and Ugas is a former champion who lost to Errol Spence and was on a little bit of a layoff, but he came back and he beat him and really re-upped the eye damage, as you heard from Bozy Ennis in the quote that I was reading earlier in this video. So you can't take nothing away from Barrios. He's always in entertaining fights, whether it be the Gervonta Tank Davis, Abdul Wahid fight, whether it's a Keith Thurman fight. He had another fight at 140 where he had a messed up eye. In that fight, I was at that live. It was on the Errol Spence, Sean Porter card. So I like Barrios. You know, I like the way he fights. He always gives it his all. He's coming off a great performance. So as far as I'm concerned, with the momentum, the time is now for a fight like that, because we all know Errol Spence and Terence Crawford are likely in negotiations to run it back. So at this point, it's not a logical fight for Jaron Ennis. He's still young. He still feels he can make the weight at 147 pounds. So there's no reason for him to move up unless he absolutely couldn't make weight. So at the end of the day, he has to just keep pumping out these style fights and go for the titles if Errol Spence. And see, that's another reason why Jaron Ennis shouldn't move up, because you just became a champion through the IBF, whether people like it or not. That's what happened. You just became a champion through the IBF. And at the end of the day, Crawford and Errol Spence may possibly move up and compete, because Crawford already set history. He's already 2x undisputed. That's already done. He already set that history. Once you've done it, there's no reason to hold the belts hostage unless that's what you truly want. And I don't think making 47 at this point was what you would call easy for Errol Spence, definitely, or Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford showed signs of like kind of fatigue and, you know, a strenuous weight cut as well. So at the end of the day, I think it would be good for both fighters to move up. And if that's the case, that opens up room for Jaron Ennis. Boom. Subscribe to my channel, check out some of these other videos, and Happy New Year.